All right. Welcome to our youth ministry training event. I'm Pastor Michael Jeanette and serving as assistant to the bishop in the Southeastern Synod of the ELCA. And we cover Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee, but we're welcoming some folks from all over, which is great. Wanted to ask you all a question as we get to know each other a little bit. And that is, if I had 25 hours in a day, I would add, and then you get to fill in the blank. And so if I had 25 hours in a day, I would like to say I would add another hour of sleep. But chances are I wouldn't take myself up on that offer. So I would like to say sleep and hope I would stick with that. So if you would share, and I live in the Atlanta area. So if you would, here comes Kate back on. Hopefully Kate's woes are cured. Let's get her on board here. Hey, still connecting. Kate, hey, you are on mute, but can you hear us? All right, she can hear us. Awesome. So the question I asked was, if you had 25 hours in a day, what would you add to your day? And I said an hour of sleep. I don't know that I would actually take myself up on that offer, but that's what I would do. Add an hour of sleep. So if you would share your name, the congregation that you're connected to, or ministry that you're part of, and then answer that question. So Nikki, I'm going to start with you.
Can you go on to the next one? Darcy started barking again, so it's hard to hear.
No problem. We'll go to Kate. Is it Hofstetter?
Hofstetter, yep.
Excellent. We'll go to you, Kate.
All right, so I live in Southeastern Virginia, and I attend Faith Lutheran Suffolk in Suffolk, Virginia, obviously. And gosh, so I took over as our youth director right at the same time that COVID hit. So I haven't really been very terribly effective with our teams. I've been able to do a little bit more with our little ones with Sunday school and stuff, but yeah, it's been a little bit challenging. And if I had an extra hour in the day, I would also love to say I would sleep, but I probably would have to spend it getting caught up on everything that doesn't get done in the 24 hours I already have between school and I teach first grade. So I've got that, and then kids of my own and church and everything else. So a house.
The pesky house question.
Yeah.
How do I get it all clean and done and tidy, or whatever it is that I want?
Yeah,
yep.
Thankfully, my 15-year-old daughter just decided that she wanted to start earning money. So I was like, okay, here you go. So it's been a little more helpful recently, but I'm sure that, will not last long.
Get the chore chart out. Yep. They're going. All right, Kate Burkhart, how about for you? So name, congregation, and then if you had another hour in that day.
Yeah, so hi, again, my name is Kate. I was sharing earlier that I attend Prince of Peace Lutheran, and that is just north of Atlanta in Georgia. And if I had an extra hour, it would probably end up being sleep, but would also depend on, I have a 15-month-old toddler, and I think she's adorable and the best thing I've ever done with my life. And I'll brag about her any chance I get. So I would actually probably, depending on how she's feeling that day, we would either spend that time apart or we would spend that time exploring together. But it would probably be outside, especially this time of year. Fall is my jam. So, and especially now that it's not a blizzard, because I grew up in Buffalo. So now that we get a real fall, I am here for it.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. Avery, let's go to you. Name, congregation, and if you had 25 hours in a day.
Okay. I'm Avery Bray. I'm from St. John Lutheran Church in Griffin, Georgia, which is in between Atlanta and Macon. And if I had 25 hours in a day, I'm assuming I would spend that extra hour probably sleeping. But if it wasn't for that, I would probably try to be more active in my community.
Okay. Excellent. All right, Mama Nikki.
I'm Mama Nikki. I'm from Portsmouth, Virginia. I also go to church at St. Andrews. I used to go, I know Kate very well because I used to go to Faith Lutheran. We don't really have any high schoolers right now in our synod. I'm sorry, in our church congregation. However, I work a lot more with winter celebration with Dave Delaney as the female advisor. And also any chance I can have to help out. I just completed my master's, so I have more time. So I'm not worried about that extra hour in a day. Although I probably would say mine would be spent sleeping, because this virtual teaching is kicking my derriere. Exhausting. So
Yeah. Yes, I have a senior in high school who is in person, and he's dual enrollment, so he's half high school classes and then half online college courses through Georgia State. And then I have a 9th grader and a 2nd grader who are both home here with me, and I'm home. We have an office. I'm sorry.
that's quite a gap. You said, I want to make sure I heard correctly. You said a 9th grader, you have a 9th grader and a senior, and then you said a 2nd grader?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Lord bless you.
8, 13, and 17. Oh, sorry, 14. My wife's back here. She's an institutional memory of our household. So 8, 14, and 17. So it goes. But yeah, so yeah, there's a gap. But as soon as we got rid of all of our stuff, then we had another one. So we had to reconfigure all that. So but yeah, a bunch of blessings there, and excited for that. But yeah, it's been a challenge these days, obviously, having to live differently and carefully, and then that rolls over into, obviously ministry, and what do we do and how do we do ministry. I know some churches are back together and doing some things, and youth group, I know, like Prince of Peace that Kate Burkhardt said was with another congregation, and they're doing some in-person stuff with some online stuff at the same time. And then some are just, we're not doing in person yet, maybe 2021, and then there's that trend we're hearing in trickles about, are we trending upward again with cases? And seems to be back to like July levels, where we have a lot to think about. This particular time together is going to be a little bit more of the why behind youth ministry. And so there will be some very practical resources to kind of send you off with, but it's going to be a little bit of the why. And I think that asking why we do youth ministry is really important today, because the things that we were doing, we are not doing anymore in most cases. And so, why do we gather? What's behind that? And so that's where we're going to start. But first, I want to share a poll. So if you all would take a second and check out these questions. The first one is, how long have you been volunteering or serving as a youth leader, paid and or volunteer? So you can add up all the years if you're both. And then the second question, why are you currently involved in youth ministry? And then the last one is, were you involved in youth ministry as a youth? So if you just take a second and put those answers in. Yeah.
It's not letting me submit.
Oh, who's it? Who's having an issue?
Nikki.
Nikki. Okay. Well, that's all right. I mean, there's just a couple of us here. Just kind of be interesting to. You can answer them out loud here. So I'm going to end the poll, and then we'll just share. Yours just will not be anonymous, so you can choose if you want to answer. So we got 2 of you at 6 to 15 years, and 1 of you less than a year. So who's our less than a year? Avery. All right. And how about for you, Mama Nikki? What's your range?
Over 15 years. Over
15 years. Okay. And then the main reason I'm currently involved is it's my job and my calling. I had to stick that in there. I didn't want it to sound like flippant, like, well, I have to. Somebody says my deacon, pastor, youth leader asked me, and no one else would do it. And that's how it goes sometimes. But for you, Mama Nikki, do you want to answer that question there for us?
It's my calling. I seriously believe that. Every time in my life I've tried to get away with working with youth, God has always brought me right back. So, and I love it. I absolutely positively love it. Excellent. It's not a job. It's an
Yeah,
adventure.
it's an adventure. To borrow that slogan. And then finally, I was involved in youth ministry as a youth. Yes, yes, and no. So that's okay. How about for you, Nikki? Was that something you did as a young person?
Well, now I think I know why the button wouldn't let me submit, because I didn't realize there was a question number 3.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, I was, I actually grew up Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and I was involved in Ongoing Ambassadors for Christ. So even as a youth, yes, for as long as I can remember.
Excellent. Well, thank you for taking that time. We got somebody joining us here now, so we're going to let them in, welcome them on board. It's Dwayne. Let's see if he's able to join us here. There we go. Hello, Dwayne. Glad you can join us. So when you get a chance, there you go. Yeah. So is this Dwayne?
It's Dwayne, correct.
Excellent. Well, good to have you on board the call here. We've just been doing a little bit of get to know you stuff here. I'm gonna ask you this question. You can take a moment as you get settled in. But if you had 25 hours in a day, what would you do with that extra hour? So when you get settled and you get ready, if you want to share your video or not, we'd love to have you answer that question. But I'm going to get into just a little bit of why we're here today first, and then I'll come back to you, Dwayne. Okay.
Sure.
So as I mentioned before, we're in a weird space right now in terms of any kind of ministry in the world and whatever we do. And we just had this conversation with some youth workers from Atlanta last week, and was thinking about, there's a lot of challenges and a lot of frustration about people not showing up, or how do I hold an event? How do I do it safely? My congregation has guidelines and I'm trying to follow them, but it's a lot to juggle. And so it just is a really, I think, important opportunity we have here to ask why again. And I want to share some of that in just a moment. Let me come back to you, Dwayne. If you had an extra hour in the day, Dwayne, what would you, I'll give you a couple of the responses, was maybe sleep, time with kids, or time away from kids, depending on the situation, and just time in the community. So for you, Dwayne, if you had that extra hour, what would that look like for you?
Well, I'm glad I wasn't the first one who would have said sleep.
Yeah.
But at this point,
I was the
I don't
first
think.
one to say.
Yeah, I know. My body won't let me sleep, but for so long at this point in my life.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if I could take advantage of that. An extra hour, I think it will probably be trying to do something creative.
Okay.
I like writing plays for the kids, so it'll probably be something along that line.
Neat. That's awesome. And where are you coming from? What congregation or ministry are you connected to these days?
Lutheran Church of the Atonement here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Excellent.
Pastor Beverly Shaw.
Excellent. Yep. Well, I'm over in Tucker, so I'm not too far away, Tucker, Georgia.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're able to join us today. I'm going to help kind of get a little bit of a vision of why you've probably not seen this particular maybe vision, but I want to share with you. I'm going to actually share a whiteboard screen, a board here to draw on. Can you all see this little sort of crosshairs here, if you will?
Yeah.
I was thank you, Dwayne. So I was part of a disciple group for a while, and we kind of use this language. And I just want to walk through just a little bit of it with you. The goal for today is not this, but this is just a starting point. Based on what Jesus does with his disciples. And in Jesus' walk with his disciples, he spends a lot of time with them, right? He invites them to come with him on a journey. And there's this vertical axis here and it's about invitation. And another way to think of invitation is relationship. And now, as Jesus spends time with them, he builds rapport with them. They literally kind of walk with him, eat with him. They all sleep kind of together in the same place, and they're all traveling together as Jesus does his ministry. And along the way, he eventually then puts forth challenges for them and invites them to pray, invites them to heal, invites them to go out on mission. And that's kind of this challenge area here. Now, let me just pause there. Does that make sense? Jesus, he invites them into relationship, right? He works on relationship with them. He supports them. He cares for them. And in the challenge part is he actually does invite them eventually to go on without him, right? I mean, that's the ultimate end there, is that they would go, now the Spirit would be with them, so that relationship still goes on. And in that sort of best sense, in terms of relationship and challenge, that's where we get this sense of discipleship. And this all ties back to youth ministry, and we'll kind of get there, but this is where I think I like to see the framework of any kind of ministry, because what happens a lot of times when we think youth ministry is about get into relationship with the youth, but then not really offer opportunities for them to lead, not offer opportunities for them to understand how to pray. If we don't give them opportunity to stretch a little bit, we end up really kind of with a consumer culture, which kind of happens overall with the church, right? We get this idea of we want to be in relationship, we're good at hanging out together, but in terms of the challenges for our folks, we tend to be a little bit lax. And so that kind of gets to this consumer culture. And when you have that, you're also going to be entering into another culture, and that's just a stressful culture. This is where you get y'all probably heard of the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the work done by 20% of the people. And that's what you get down here in this stressed out section, this stressed out culture. I don't know about, so let me stop there for just a moment. We're not going to dive too much deeper into this, but this makes sense so far. Does this relate? I mean, can you connect to that? Have you seen this before? Have you been in a situation where you've been invited and you're hanging out, but there's not really been a real challenge? There's not been a question to step up and serve, right? We can probably all name a time where we've had a lot of challenge, but not a lot of support. Hey, I need somebody to go do this, right? Sometimes that's what we need. I just need this little task done, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we don't have anybody to run the youth program. How about you do it? And then that's it. You're just left alone. The hope is that anybody who is asked to step into that role would have sort of a nurturing relationship to go along with that. So whether you're new at youth ministry or you're a veteran, I like to look at this as sort of a framework for how do we know when we're kind of hitting the mark? I think it's always good to kind of say, to have some kind of measures or some kind of way to kind of say, where are we going with this? And so I want you to think about youth ministry in terms of this context here. It gets to the why behind what we do. And so let me just stop there. Nikki, any reflections on this so far? Any thoughts? Have you been in a situation where you've been able to nurture others and be the challenge, but also be in a relationship with them and nurture them through that? Or have you been on the other side of that? Any comments from you?
I'm rather hard on myself, but I grew up as a PK. So I've been in the role of the stressful, where the low invitation, I personally, there was a high challenge because I had to be the pastor's daughter, and there was a lot of expectation put on me. There was low invitation because I think for me, I don't think I was very inviting in the aspect, because at that time I was in my early 20s, I was young, and it was expected of me.
Mhm.
But coming into the the ELCA and actually having this joy of wanting to be with kids and stuff and helping nurture this to get to the point. I mean, honestly, Kate's son is a prime example of the nurturing part, because he has grown into this. And also, I guess my daughter, I forget about my own kids and stuff, but growing up in the church, you know, they have that desire and that strive to carry on. And I think it's because of the leadership we have as youth leaders. So I don't feel that it's a stressful challenge anymore. It's a delight. It's something I want to be a part of. It's something that I want to be there for the kids. And you were talking about friendships and stuff. And I think when you kind of get into the discipleship where you take that thought process of, oh, I've got to get the kids involved, I got to get the kids involved, you kind of gradually go into it because you're not trying to be their friends, you are their friends. But they also respect the role that you're in, and it becomes this beautiful relationship where they know that you are there for them 100% of the time. And giving them those opportunities to lead certain areas of the of different things. And Dave Delaney, I think, is very good at helping teach us how to do that. I wish I could say I'm good at that, but I have not really had an opportunity to kind of do that yet. So,
Yeah.
but I would like to say I kind of maybe go a little bit more towards the I don't know. See, because you know, I don't really think I think I'm more in that the second quadrant.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally relate with this completely. And I think also, having been somebody in my 20s, I think I have fallen into that youth category of where the low challenge, low invitation, where it's an emptiness because you haven't put anything in there. However, when you feel alone and you don't feel invited, and I think that's one of the things I love about our kids is when they want to do youth things, the biggest and first thing that they ever say, our high schoolers, are they want to make sure every single high school student, 9th grade up to 12th grade, feels welcome. And to have kids that age sit in there and wanting to make sure they are not thinking about themselves, this theory of mind, they're going outward and they're thinking of that discipleship that carries over in that. So yeah. So I think I rocked out. I think we rock at the discipleship and getting to see that growth, you know, and it's wonderful. Is that what you were hoping for me? Did I talk too much? I mean, me talk too much? Never.
That was totally fine. And I'll give everybody a chance to respond. But I will say what happens is when we're in this consumer portion here, and we will, if the, and again, we're not like just pushing people, right? Like it's invitational. And so when we invite people into that, sometimes that journey, we want it to go like maybe from here to here. But what typically is, what's more accurate is there tends to be this, when we over time, tends to be more like this, right? Where you get this sense of like, I really want to be in this disciple area, but there's just all this craziness and this dip here. And I've heard this referred to as the valley of the shadow of death, where it's like you're stressed. I remember the first time I was asked by my youth leader to give a sermon. I think I was in 9th or 10th grade, and I had no idea what I was doing. But she walked me through like every step. Like it was my story, it was my sermon, but she was there with me. And so I kind of journeyed. And it's not just a one-time thing. It's kind of cyclical, right? We go through these stages, but there is a sense I was like going definitely in this valley down here. And I was just like, I had to preach one time when I was at a youth event in front of the bishop at the time. And I was like just like a year out of college. And I was about to head to seminary, but I was just like, I got to preach, okay, in front of youth leaders and pastors. Oh, and by the way, the bishop will be there. I was like, so it was a little bit of stressfulness, but it led into this sense of like, well, no, I've got people around me, supporting me, caring for me. So it wasn't just stressful, right? There was that movement. So let me stop there. Avery, for you, what was, I know you kind of new to youth ministry maybe, but from a leader perspective, but let me not assume anything. what resonates here with you, or maybe if you have an experience as a younger, as a youth, anything here for you?
Well, as a youth in the church and a young adult in the church, I've kind of seen multiple aspects of the church. And I've definitely seen where the stressful side, where 80-20, 80% of the work's done by 20% of the people, and then those
Sure.
20% of the people get burned out. And when those people get burned out, it's because everyone else is being consumers, and we can't quite bridge the gap to get discipleship in terms of using these little quadrants.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all this is great. My thing is how can we bridge the gap between getting consumers involved?
Sure. Yeah. There's a phrase that goes with that, it's funny that you use that phrase, consumers. Obviously it's up there, but to use that language, and people may not prefer this kind of language, but I think that sense of like, how do we become producers of spiritual goods rather than just consumers, right? And again, this ties back into youth ministry. Like, one of the questions that came up last week in the group I was with was, why do we do youth ministry? And like, when we ask our youth, like, who are you in God's image? A lot of times we just define ourselves by like the group we gather with. Like, I'm on the team, I'm in the band, I'm an artist, and some of that is good and calling and stuff. So don't get me wrong, but like a lot of times we define ourselves only by that. So how are we helping our youth to understand that that's not their only piece of their identity? And we can talk about baptism and the body of Christ. And we have a lot of, I think as Lutherans especially, we have a lot of tools in the bag, if you will, to remind us of who and whose we are. So yeah, and I think part of your, not to answer the question necessarily, but yeah, I think this kind of framework is just one way to look at it and say, how are we challenging our youth, but then how are we also walking alongside them and giving them the support they need? So more on that in a little bit, but anything else you want to share, Avery, or are you good?
That's it.
All right, thank you. Kate Hofstetter, how about for you? Anything here resonate or invitation challenge? Have you been there, done that, and kind of where are you?
Yeah, well, as I shared when we first got on, the church that I attended, Nikki and I have both attended at one point in time, and so we know a lot of the same kids and have relationships with them. But I had been being an elementary school teacher for 20 plus years. I've always been on the like Sunday school side of things, and a very good friend of both Nikki's and mine had been our youth director for the last 3 or 4 years, and she had developed these really strong bonds with our teenagers, which include my 2 kids. So it's a little bit of a difference. I'm sure you can relate when it's your own kids and they maybe don't want you around like other people's kids might want you around. But she stepped away from the job like December of last year, and it was kind of like, okay, Kate, it's yours now. So I knew the kids, but I didn't have really strong bonds with them from the last few years because they've, I had them in Sunday school, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Now they're 10th, 11th grade. So it was, anyway, but I went to my very first Synod youth event in January for our winter celebration, and Nikki was there, and it was amazing. And I left just so in awe of these kids who, like Nikki said, like they were so inclusive. I mean, there are kids who are, transgender and, on the LGBTQ everywhere on that spectrum. And the kids just welcome them in and they love them and they are so amazing. And I was so fired up and the kids had a great time and we were making all these great connections. And then like 6 weeks later, I haven't seen some of these kids in almost, like 6 months because we're still not meeting in person. And that's been very stressful. So I feel like we were really, really high and now we're kind of low. So it's very disappointing, but I'm hoping that, I keep reaching out and we're still trying, but it's just so hard when we can't really meet in person. And then all of our Synod events for the rest of the year, including the week-long Kairos experience that I could not wait for, all of those things haven't happened in the traditional sense. And so it's been very frustrating, but I have high hopes for 2021.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that comes to mind is We all just, it's easy to say, but hard to accept sometimes, even when I say it to myself and hear myself say it, is, giving ourselves some grace. And it's just, it feels, hopefully it's not just, it's not a platitude, right? It's not just to appease people, but we all need grace in this time. And that is a challenge to receive sometimes even. And so, and the other thing I thought of as you're talking about this is, we can see youth ministry through this lens, but then you can see yourself through this lens, right? Like, how is this a mirror for me? And I think who around me are the people that I'm in relationship with and who are supporting me. So I'm hoping that there are people on this journey with me. So it's kind of two-way. It's the saying is like you're a shepherd from the front and a sheep from the back, right? Like you're helping to disciple others, but then you're also in some sense in your own discipleship journey. So who around you are you connecting with? And sometimes, so the underlying assumption in all this is that the Spirit is with us doing what the Spirit will do. And so we have that promise, we have that gift, and I don't want to overlook that. But then, God invites us to be with people in our communities. And so who is journeying with you? Is it, if you're on staff, is it a Synod youth leader? Is it another church leader? Is it a friend? And if you're a volunteer, is the team that you're working with, or is maybe there's a pastor or another person that's like a mentor for you. Who are you working with that may be nurturing you into this? And it's okay to say, hey, I want to take on this challenge, but I need support, or I need some assistance, or who can and I need resources, or I need people. So it's okay to kind of look at yourself and say, where on this do I need some help? And this may give you some framework to do that, to say, hey, I want to go do this youth event, but I'm not really sure what to do. And so, I was thinking for you, Kate Burkhart, like, go teach what it means to be a Synod, which is what you had to do a couple weeks ago. You're like, that's a challenge. But hopefully they pointed you in the right direction, or maybe you found it yourself and you worked with other people and kind of worked through that. But I don't know if that was so. Let me just turn over to you now, since I brought that up. Where for you are you living into this, or do you see this in the youth ministry? What's your response?
I haven't seen. I appreciate graphic organizers so much. So I'm loving the whiteboard right now.
Okay.
Dwayne, I don't think you had a chance. I don't think you were signed on yet. But I was sharing with the group that I am actually on a team. I am one of 4. And we combine forces with another church. So there are 2 pastors, myself, and another lay leader. And we are doing a hybrid confirmation class of Zoom and in person at the same time. I know for sure. It would very much be, yes, I see you highlighting the burnout box right now. But luckily, by us, we both had relatively small confirmation classes. I grew up Catholic, and so I'm used to just 20 of us shoved in a classroom. And so having this being a smaller group, I feel like it has been set up that high challenge, but with a positive spin. I feel like it's very much the resources that I'm using them for the first time this year. I did volunteer last year. We were using a different curriculum set. So I appreciate the way the rotation has been set up. It's an hour-long class. I appreciate that I am not the one that has to figure out how to make the technology happen. And just the way we've been. So if one person is teaching, there is an assigned assistant, and pretty much the assistant has kind of been the Zoom liaison. So if somebody drops something, in the chat, we can't necessarily hear it right away because we'll get feedback. But then someone's really good about, hey, so-and-so asked about this. Usually it's not that they asked about this because it's teenagers and they're starting to get Zoom burnout, which I feel badly about.
Yeah.
But like, if I ask, like, by a show of hands, I'll ask them then, drop your vote in the chat. So this past weekend, we actually talked about baptism. And so being able to ask them, like, just using the small catechism, like, so what does Luther say about this? And so the Zoom group was actually able to meet in a discussion. But seeing the chart laid out like this, I am very nervous about the invitation portion of things. I'm wondering if other people are feeling this, but most of my like tips and tricks and like go-to like strategies we can't do in a post-pandemic situation. And so I'm noticing that for the in-person kids that unless we specifically divide them up and tell them, no, discuss with your group, it's hard to get verbal feedback and participation from them. And like something about, I appreciate the masks so much. Yes, everyone, please wear your mask. They do work, but it's almost creating a shield for them to hide behind. I'm like, no, I can still see your eyes. I can see you're not looking at me. I see you're trying to avoid eye contact with me. Like, you can answer a question. It's okay. And so I'm thinking a lot, just hearing Kate H talk about the youth, like the large group meetings for like the kids who have high invitation and like, are highly invested. I'm so excited. I'm excited for them that they have found that, but I'm thinking of the teenagers that are like, I'm here because my mom made me. Like, that like, just, I'm here because I have to, I just want to get confirmed and then my parents will leave me alone. Like, and so right now I know that no matter what I do, they are going to be some youth that just are going to live in the apathetic, boring category. And so I just have to keep trusting that I am planting seeds today and I may not see the forest that grows, but I hope that there will be a forest someday. And I hope that the ones that are flourishing now that they don't burn out too soon and that they don't lose this fire if they go off to college and all of their friends are not like super into synod meetings. I see both that could happen. And now it's good to be made aware, to be reminded that like, I mean, we all kind of like knew this in the back of our brain, but it's nice to see it organized and to keep it in the forefront of how we interact with our youth. We're all youth leaders. We all got to talk too much.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I mean, that is important to know about the invitation piece. Like, how are we connecting, right? I mean, because that's part of what it's about. And there's strategies to that. And then we can talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But it's sort of like knowing that this is an aspect of discipleship, right? Is being in a relationship. What does that look like? Is it connecting with them via text? Is it group me? Is it, is it the in-person? Is it, so there's lots of ways that gets lived out. And I don't want to ignore that. But again, for me, going back to, why is that important? That drives them, that desire to either keep them connected or stay connected with them. And then the other thing that we have to kind of, that I kind of tell myself anyway, is, one of the things that Jesus talks about is that there's these kind of persons of peace element to all this. And that's the person of peace concept is, Jesus tells the disciples, go to the house and knock on the door and bring peace. And if they receive it, stay with them as long as they want to, stay with them as long as you can. And I lost my white screen. There we go. Stay with them as long as you can. And if they dismiss it, then you step away. And so in some sense, we still keep on keeping on, but we're not going to connect as youth leaders with every single person. And that's where it's important to have one of the former concepts, I think, or misconceptions that was a carryover from sort of like a couple decades ago, is like the 1 to 5 rule. Like we need one adult for every 5 youth, right? And that's or you can whatever the number is. But I love the Fuller Youth Ministry Network's idea of flipping that on its head and saying 5 adults for every 1 youth. And what they mean by that is you have the Sunday school teacher, you have the youth leader, you have the pastor, you have the people that sit in the same pew as them, you have the person who brings the donuts for the kids or whatever. How are we flipping that upside down so that there's this sort of network, a web, if you will, of adults who are in healthy relationship with our youth. And so how are we as youth leaders then helping them to make those connections? And when we go to the big events like Kate was talking about, that for me was huge, because I loved going to our Synod youth gatherings and our statewide. In our Synod, we have like an all Georgia youth gathering and all Tennessee statewide youth gathering, but then we also have a Synod-wide gathering once a year. So like going to those events, I was connected with these other adults who I ended up forming healthy bonds with and relationships with, and just over time, and some were pastors and some are lay leaders and some deacons. And so it's like, how are we creating those spaces for our youth to connect with other adults? Or are we keeping them siloed to the youth ministry, right? Does that make sense? So, for you, Kate, the fact, Burkhart, for the fact that you're doing joint ministry is automatically starting to help them connect with other adults, from another congregation. And what does that mean then for the youth? How are they connecting to the worship leadership, like whether they're staff or volunteer, worship leaders? How are they connecting with, how are the youth connecting with stewardship in the congregation? How are youth connecting with, if there's advocacy work going on in the community, like how are they a part of that? And the more we invite them into those relationships, right? That's that invitation piece, that it's not just, they're not only relying on the youth leader or whether that's volunteer or paid. All right, so let me stop there. Got me preaching. Anything else, Kate, that you want to share from that?
I think that's pretty much it. Just making sure that, we are meeting all of the needs of the youth that are in front of us, whether they realize they want to be there or not, until they realize they want to be there.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes that means not being afraid to get, so I'll throw this in here real quick, another little teaching nugget. And I got this from a book called Growing Young. It's from Fuller Youth Institute. And one of the things they talk about in youth ministry is keychain leadership. And what they mean by that is the easiest example to give is like when somebody's learning to drive a car. Like you don't just hand them the keys and then let them go, right? Like you sit them down before you even start the car. Well, maybe not, maybe trial and error, learn by trial and error. But you go through this process where you say, okay, you can go up and down the driveway, forward, reverse. And then you say, okay, well, let's just go in the neighborhood, or let's go to a parking lot. And I'll drive to the parking lot. And then when we get there, I'll put you in the driver's seat and then you can drive around a little bit. And there's this incremental nature, at least for me, with our 17-year-old of, we moved from the driveway to the neighborhood to just to the school and back, and then eventually the interstate, and eventually, or night driving or rain driving the rain. So part of this concept is giving them the challenges in safe ways. So instead of just saying, oh, go preach and here's the keys, and then not ever talk to them again, like that could be troublesome. Unless they're just gung-ho and they want to go for it. There's an element to kind of nurturing them and being in relationship with them through the challenges, so that even if they do falter, that there's still this sense of it's not that bad. It's going to be okay, and we'll get through this. So giving them that space in challenge in appropriate ways. Because the really hard thing, and according to this model, is like to give somebody the challenge and then not to walk with them through that. That could be difficult. So yeah, Kate. So yeah, the more maybe we continue to invite them into that, into the challenge, but then also walk with them. But I hear you. These days, sometimes we, like you said, we don't know if it's that seed is going to nurture or not and grow. But we're called to do the work, right? So. Thank you. Dwayne, let me turn to you, and and see if you have any thoughts or questions, or if you can relate to somebody who walked with you as you were young, or maybe you're walking with other people. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. I apologize for not being able to go live. I've been traveling since I got on. I'm trying to get dinner for the household, but
Oh, that's fine.
I am in a situation, fortunately, where I, attend a small church where I grew up there. So I've been there since I was a kid, and I'm in a position now where I'm a Sunday school teacher, so I know the kids pretty well because they come through my class, and most of the ones who are in the youth group, middle-aged to high school, actually are in my class as well. So the bond is easy. They, kind of know me since they were little because I've been there for a long time, but been all over the quadrant.
Sure.
And, the challenge now, as somebody was mentioning earlier, in a post-pandemic world, is how do we keep the connection where we might have had it? How do we make it even stronger? But one thing I've noticed by them just participating in other areas of the church, even while we're doing Zoom, where we get together at the church and they do food giveaways on a weekend. They miss being in the building, and that can work to our advantage later on because they do miss that aspect of interacting with each other.
Sure.
But one thing that I've kind of learned to do along the way, especially to try to stay out of the apathetic, boring quadrant, is to allow them to kind of grab some of the issues by the horn themselves and put it on them to make sure that the next program that we put on is not like we've done years before, or whatever they want to do next Easter, make sure it's something that energetic that they will be involved in and be excited about doing, and wanting a good outcome. So giving them ownership of, especially the ones that you assign as captains and lieutenants. I've even divided my class up into two sides. We got an alpha team and an omega team, and so there's friendly competition going on. So by doing things along that line, it kind of doesn't take you out of the loop, but you can kind of step back and kind of oversee them as they, especially the ones who've been appointed leaders, take some pride in it and make the attempt to make sure what they're doing has a good outcome. So there's some advantages by going that route, and hopefully them by them missing being together, that when that day comes, and hopefully sooner than later when we can all get back together, then we can build on that.
Well, thank you for that. I love the creativity that you bring to that, and that helping kind of just instill that healthy sense of challenge with one another. I'm a big sports fan, so I'm like, inside of a team, you want two people competing for the same position, right? Helps them make each other look, iron sharpens iron kind of thing, in a healthy way. And so that's an interesting point that you brought up too, about you're seeing in them that they we sometimes think, we have to emphasize that the church building is not what it's all about. But a lot of times that's where we've been worshiping and singing the hymns, and we're singing the songs, and that's where we gather together. And so there's a healthy sense of that spiritual home, if you will, whatever that building is or that place is that you gather, not necessarily for the place itself, but because of the moments where faith has been formed, quite often are that place. And I think a healthy sense of the church building is that it's not just a place where we gather, but it's a place from which then we are sent, right? It's kind of both end, that we gather together in order to be sent out into the world. So we don't lose that sense of mission and focus, right? And focus. I love the idea of gathering outside and doing the food drives, I think you said. and giving them a more wholesome sense of we're not just consumers, right? We're not here just to be receiving, a youth event experience. We're here to gather to then share with the world our gifts with the world, our gifts with our faith community, our gifts with one another. So
Exactly.
excellent. Well, thank you for that. Thank you. Let me circle back and kind of just step back. Any other thoughts that came up for you all in the last little bit here? Anybody else want to share something else? I think one of the other elements of this all is that there is a place for everyone in youth ministry. I think quite often we think if I'm not the boisterous, outgoing, the extrovert in front of the room, that I am somehow not qualified for youth ministry. So I just want to lift up to everybody once again, whether you're a veteran and you're working with other people, or maybe you're in a place where you're not really sure where you fit in. You can have people praying for your youth ministry. You can have your people dropping off food when we're gathering in person, right? Drop off food for youth ministry. Maybe there's somebody with financial gifts that can donate money to a cause that you're supporting as a youth ministry. And maybe there is that quiet person that wants to be with the youth. You don't have to be the outgoing, crazy, fun loving person, because I've been in youth ministry for, after high school, I basically started doing some youth ministry in 1997. So since then, I've been in some form or fashion helping to lead either my home congregation or working with a Synod event, or even eventually then with the ELC, a youth gathering, doing some volunteering there. And I've never been the one to be out in front, even though I'm in a leadership position now. That's not my style. I'm not the Pied Piper. People don't come for me. But what are we doing to help create part of this atmosphere of invitation and challenge? I'm much more of a, within safety guidelines, I'm more of kind of like a smaller crowd of people I connect better with than, say, the whole group, because I'm not the one who likes to be in front of the room all the time. I do that when I need to, and I'm a pastor, so I've been in front of people before, so I've had a lot of practice with that. But it's always pointing towards something else, right? Whether you're the extrovert or the introvert, like wherever you're leading in whatever way, we're pointing to our youth towards Jesus. We're pointing them to the one who loves us and forgives us and gives us a way to live. So anyway, that's just a reminder that there is a place for everybody in youth ministry. Do any of you have any examples that you would like to share where somebody stepped into youth ministry and surprised you, or maybe you stepped in and were surprised at the fact that there was a good fit?
Me.
Go for it.
Kate Hofstetter, she is someone who likes to be behind the scenes. So for her to step up and take the lead has been amazing. And I'm like so proud of her. I'm so excited because she's, I have to give kudos because, and she's right. Maggie had a huge spirit, a huge set of shoes to fill and stuff. And Kate's not trying to fill those shoes as much as Kate is trying to carry on that love that Maggie has. And it shows. And Kate, sorry, you are my little shining star right now. But when I saw Kate come into Winter Cell in January, I was so excited because I knew that Maggie had taken on that new position with the Postal Service, and I had no idea where the youth were going to go, because that's where we started, was at Faith. And so to see that seed and that power was still going strong, with Kate taking the lead, was amazing. And she wasn't sure what to expect. And I think you kind of were like, she didn't know what to expect, but what she got was not a disappointment at all, but it was more than what she could have ever anticipated. Not only that, but our small group. So I also think a lot about one of the things I loved when I was at Faith and I asked for us to carry over at St. Andrews is that when you were talking about there are 5 adults for 1 youth, that is like a perfect analogy, because and whenever we would go on a Kairos trip, which is our week-long high school retreat, they had a prayer partner, and that partner would send them a card before they left, letting them know that they were praying for them. Then the pastor would pray over everyone before we even left. Then also confirmation at Faith would have a mentor, so that you did not listen to the same person, pastor or the leader do the confirmation class, but then you had a chance to take a Sunday about once a month or so, and you sat down with your mentor, and your mentor was someone you could go to and you could talk to and process all the information that you had going on. So
Yep.
I think the biggest thing I'm liking right now, and that I think about, because Kate is getting to be one of those 5. I mean, she's even always been there for the kids, because she's always been a natural leader, but she's always been behind the scenes. So she's also done some amazing vacation Bible schools. And if it weren't for people like Kate who could do that, our youth wouldn't have the wonderful experiences that they have. Kate's more, don't let her quietness fool you, because that woman is full of power. I mean, and the kids love her.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That's awesome. And Kate has a lot of nice artwork behind her too. That's awesome. Are those your kids from school?
Yes, those are. I haven't been able to bring myself to take them down yet. They're from my last year's kids, but some of them actually still sending me things, so that always is helpful too.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to piggyback on what Nikki said, and that is in our congregation. So, it's never really been an overt thing with sometimes. I mean, sometimes there have been with the things Nikki mentioned, but like, so my daughter is 15, and all the joys of a 15-year-old girl. But about a year ago, we were going through a pretty rough patch with her. And I mean, we had a very emotional kitchen table kind of conversation with, her dad and me and herself, of course. And she said to me, church is the only place I can go where I feel like I can actually be me. And it was not, yes, I'm the one who takes her to church, and I hope that I've instilled some values and some beliefs and, some core faith, with her. But that child has not sat with me in church since she was about 5 years old. She used to have to sit with me till the handshaking part, and then she could go sit elsewhere. Somebody didn't even know she was my child. She looks nothing like me. She looks more like actually, with her blonde hair and fairness. But to hear my daughter say that was so impactful. And some of the people who have impacted her, they weren't her Sunday school teachers. Some of them were, some of them weren't. They were just people that she felt she could connect with and go to. And, and I, when they talk about it takes a village, I'm like, I'm really glad we're part of this village. These are the people who are influencing my child. And so the thought that all of us here and extending outwards can be that village for other people's kids too is tremendous to me.
Yeah, that's powerful. Well, thank you for sharing that. As a pastor and having 3 kids, there is a little bit of the PK challenges, pastor's kid challenges, but at the same time, like I was really in the 2 congregations I served before this position, there was just people there that just took us in and cared for us and cared for my kids. And I'll share one little funny story is my wife and I were, I don't know if this was like so my wife sings, I play guitar. And so we were doing a song one time, and our kids were in the, like kind of this up front, sort of second or third row. And so I'm playing guitar and I'm looking over, and I'm very self-conscious when I play. So I'm kind of like always looking at my wife, and I play off of her reactions too. I'm like, okay, am I playing this right? Too fast, too slow? And she'll let me know. But anyway, so I'm playing, she's singing. And we're about halfway through the song, she has this look on her face. Like, I'm like, oh man, I messed up, and I messed up my chords. And then because I messed up the chords, I messed her up. And I'm like, so I finished the song and I'm so like nervous now because she looked over and our son was in the second row going, just like this, just making a scene like he was conducting the choir or something. And when we mentioned that to one of the members, they were like, are you kidding? It was hilarious. Like my wife and I didn't know what's going on, but my wife was devastated. She's like, oh my gosh, she's making this such a scene. And the people that were sitting around him were just like, they're just living it up. He's just being a kid. He's just having fun. And just over time, like our children, like wherever I served, I wanted people to know, like, you know, kids are need to have this sense of welcome in this place. And so wherever I've served, we've kind of helped create that culture of like that invitation piece that we've been talking about. Like there's other adults that care for them or are with them. And so that's been a real blessing for me, is to have been in spaces where people have taken this in. And whether we get angry with them or not, when I'm up front leading, or my wife, because our kids, there's another time where my daughter, I look over, it was Christmas Eve service, and it was the 7 o'clock, it wasn't the 11 o'clock. And I look over at the acolyte seat, and we had one of those little mini pews. There's like 2-person pews, and she's got her feet up and her head on the rest, and she's sound asleep in the middle of Christmas Eve service. And I'm just like, do I go over there and scold her, or do I go over there and be like, honey, it's time to wake up? You know, and the fact that other people there see that and they're just like, you know what, it's a kid. They're just having fun, and they're here, and they're feeling safe, and they're feeling comfortable. That's that invitation piece, right? We still challenge along the way, and we still invite them into other things. But anyway, just fun little stories there of some youth stuff. Kate, who is this little one here? If you we are recording, so that's up to you.
Yeah, so this is my daughter. I accidentally left my office. That's not true. I also have a 60-pound lab. And the lab they gang up on me together. The lab opened the door and she wandered in. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Oh, welcome. So good. Well, let me take a few moments to I want to point you to some resources. Some things that would be kind of, we won't be able to get into all of them here, but hopefully will be of some use to you down the road, unless you already know about them, then they're current resources for you. So where shall I start? I'll start with this. So I'm gonna share my screen here, and just a reminder, we are recording. I'm gonna share this with y'all, but then I'm going to also share all these resources we're gonna talk about. So if you want to write them down, great. I will put them in the chat box, but I'll also send them back to you all via email, all bundled together. So here we go. Share my screen. So raise your hand if you know of this thing called the Youth Ministry Network. Anybody here? Okay, I'll take that as a no. So Youth Ministry Network is kind of, to me, it's for the ELCA. It's our main children, youth, and family ministry. It is a network, and so with that comes relationships, and with that comes resources. So let me just copy that, and I'll put it in the chat box as well. So the ELCA Youth Ministry Network is chock full of resources. There is a membership fee that goes with this. I'm not paid for them to advertise this. I think it's something like $80. And like if somebody in your congregation, or if you as a congregation want to like pay for one person to have a membership, obviously the more people, the more that the ELCA network is able to provide. They do an annual event called the Extravaganza, which I'm going to share with you all in just a moment. But really it's about connecting, youth ministry leaders across the ELCA. They have this thing here called Martin's List. I'm not going to go into it now, but it's basically, if you pay into the membership, you get access to like bukus and bukus of resources. So say, Faith Lutheran Church does this really cool Bible trivia. They have this PowerPoint file and it's a script that goes with it. If you want to share that, you can upload it to this thing called Martin's List. And you have access. And so you can go in there and search all kinds of things. People have been adding some more Zoom game type things and stuff like that, more recently needed stuff there. So there's a salary survey if you're going to be hiring a youth leader. What are the salaries for youth leaders? Congregations hosting groups, so whatever region of the ELCA you're in, you can find other groups out by you. They do this thing called discipling cohorts where it's youth discipleship, and if you want to tap into that, you can look there. The other thing I want to share with you is this thing called the Extravaganza. This is their keynote event every year for training. It does get pretty expensive to do, to travel and go to this event. Well, this year, because of the pandemic and they're limiting attendance to 100 people, usually they get a couple hundred. But this year they're doing a hybrid event and they're doing it online. I would highly, highly, highly recommend attending, because you can go for $25 this year virtually, which is awesome. So I'm going to put that link in the chat box as well. So that's the Youth Ministry Network Extravaganza for 2021. This is their theme. You can look at what workshops they're doing. Here's the director, Todd Bugler. He can share a little bit about what's going on. But you can look at the schedule. You can look at the speakers. It's kind of a typical event where you get a main speaker, a main stage speaker, or a couple of them throughout the event, and then some break-off workshops that you can do. One of the things we're doing, I don't know if folks in Virginia are thinking about this, but at least in the Atlanta area and maybe some other areas in our synod, we are going to maybe get together up to 10 people, depending on where this whole thing with COVID goes. If it's safe to do so, we may get 10 to 15 folks gathering. I don't want to commit them, Kate Burkhart, but Pastor Kevin offered up possibility of Prince of Peace, if they're open to that, that we might get just a couple of people together, because these things are so much more fun and I think fruitful when we're gathered with other people. You're bouncing ideas off each other, whether it's a main stage speaker or a workshop. You just need a place with some decent Wi-Fi, and anybody who gathers on a satellite host will need to pay $25 per individual. And then, after that, you kind of if you're gathering with other people, you really need to keep safe and masks and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not necessarily promoting that, but I am just sharing that might be an option. Or even if you want to gather virtually for the event, and then maybe you have a network of youth ministers or pastors or friends that you have in your area that you want to connect with again virtually, maybe you do get together on Zoom again after, or if you do an in-person thing and it's safe to do so, then you can do that. But for $25, you're going to get access to a whole lot of smart people, much smarter than me in youth ministry. Very, 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 very helpful event. When they go to in-person events, the price tag does go up because then you're having to travel and hotel for a couple of days and all that. So to have access for $25, highly, highly, highly recommend it. What's next? What else I want to show you? Okay, for those, this is a real specific event. I'll share this with you all. If you are interested in joining us online, we are going to do an Advent Craft Day as a synod. So I'm gonna paste the link here for you. All are welcome. There's no fee. You simply will have to gather your own supplies. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so it's a little easier to see. Y'all able to see that? Synod Advent Craft Day? Yeah, okay. So for those of you who have, and this is something you can do as a household, or if you're in a situation where you are gathering with other folks, you can do it in person, again, depending on your guidelines. So you would come to this page and register here, and you just sign up with your name and email address. So they're going to do up to, I think it's 5 crafts. Either they're doing all 5, or they might be doing 3 and then giving you 2 more to do kind of on your own, something like that. But including meditation work, devotions, based on the Isaiah readings for the season of Advent. So we're doing that November 15th. If you want to come join us, that's open to everybody. And then, since I'm kind of talking in this realm, this is our Synod's youth and young adult webpage, sesyouth.org. So that's something, again, as a resource, you can kind of ruminate, you can look through and see if there's something there that is helpful. Equipping adults, here's a link to the Youth Ministry Network. And for those of you in our Synod, I don't know that you want to travel from Virginia, but you're welcome to, maybe if you feel safe. But for those of you, for Avery, Kate, and Dwayne, if you're at all interested in being in person, or even if not, I created this little form here to let us know, are you going to be gathering? Are you going to Minneapolis? Are you going to do this from your home? Or if you want to gather with a group of less than 25 or 15 people, just let us know. And we'd love to know if you're going to participate. That way we can kind of do a little more planning around this and see if.
I think I'll bring this to Dave's attention, because I like this idea. And we have quite a big group in Hampton Roads. So this might actually be something we could try here. I like this idea a lot.
Yeah, well, yeah, take it and do what you want with it. And, again, I'm really hesitant to say, hey, everybody, let's get together, but if you're comfortable, if it's safe, if you're following guidelines, who knows what the guidelines will be in February. Like I said before, we're kind of unfortunately trending upward with cases now, but if it is possible, even if it's a group of 5 people, like to still safely gather, and maybe you do that in pockets all over. Let me go back to just up here on this page here. If you're not doing the in-person event, if you're just doing the virtual, it's February 5th and 6th, which again, if you go back to this page here, the extravaganza page, February 5th through 6th online event everywhere, and host sites here. They actually even have a link ready for those who want to be a host site to you'll fill out a form to let the extravaganza know that you are being a host site. And then there's information about how to be a host site, what minimum requirements would be for technology. So that's helpful. I spoke with one of the co-directors of the extravaganza this past Monday. And even they were very nervous about encouraging host sites, because it's just weird time that we're living in. So let me stop there real quick. I have 1 or 2 other resources. Any thoughts or questions so far?
Just Kate Hofstetter, road trip.
So yeah, I mean, Dave, I haven't talked to Dave about this. Maybe Dave and I knew that this was kind of coming. So I hope, I'm not sure what he's thinking about all that, but
I think you should put the bug in his ear as well. This is a very good idea.
So I'll share this with others and see. I'm connected to all the youth leaders in the Synod, in the ELCA, the Synod level youth leaders. So I'll share this with them and see what kind of traction that gets. So last thing I'll share, there's this thing called the Facebook, and there's some really groups out here, and I'm going to take you to some of the ones you might not have thought of before. So big ideas in youth ministry. Let me copy this. So this is where you get a lot more of the practical stuff here. I didn't even look this up. Let's see. How do you all keep in contact with parents? I'm currently using email mostly and text occasionally, but I'm wondering if there's a better option. Right? And you get people's responses. You get people uploading files here. Somebody has a job posting, right? Justice Youth Game Night PowerPoint. Click on that and you have you have a ready-made activity. Looks like it's going to take a little while to download, but you know, it's that easy to get some of these resources where you're not having to reinvent the wheel. Use the work of others. Oh, it's let's see here. There you go, Justice Game Night. Can you see that? So there you go. 5 rounds, play fair, have fun, 1 point for each correct answer. Heroes are made by the path they choose, not the powers they are graced with. Round 1, identify these 10 superhero preservers of justice. Number 1, I have the power to talk to fish. Okay. I use PIM particles to activate my superpower. So I guess they start off with some Marvel superheroes. There you go. It's a mix of Marvel and DC. Anyway, so, you know, just like that, I'm looking through somebody else's stuff that they volunteered to put out there. So please know that in youth ministry, we're all in this together. High School Musical. I can't think of that song without High School Musical. Now, every time I put on my Red Cross shirt and it says we're in this together, I'm like, we're on this together. Can't help it. So big ideas in youth ministry. Check it out. I think you have to, when you click join group, you have to like answer a couple of questions, but it's real simple and they'll let you in right away.
It was one question that I just joined, and it
There
was
you go.
simply where do you go? You know, what church are you affiliated with, or something like that. And it was
Perfect.
I'm still pending though. They must have heard about me.
There's a blacklist out there. The funny thing about this particular page is you got Michael Myers in the background. Now that you've seen that, you can't unsee it. I'm like, it's love, and there's these cool picture of youth, and oh, there's Michael Myers. Anyway, that's kind of a fun thing. I'm going to actually go back to the Youth Ministry Network because they do also have a page, ELCA Youth Ministry Network Facebook page. So you're going to get some carryover between the website, like any good website and social media, you'll get some carryover. But this page here in particular, somebody's asking any thoughts or ideas about elementary age Bible study material, something we could be able to do in about 30 minutes each week. Somebody asks, I'm looking for interactive games or group builders for Zoom catechism. We've already done scavenger hunts, you know, and so you're going to get people contributing, and then same thing, you're going to get files. If you're not familiar with this, you know, Facebook pages, you can upload files like the other one that we just saw. So look at all, you know, you got all these things here. So there's a lot of job descriptions. This, because it's a network, right? It's not just here's activities, but rather how are we connecting with each other? How are we supporting one another? You do get a lot of job descriptions that float through here. Candle time is something that Rachel Alley, who is the director for youth ministries, has done. So she has like candle time devotions. 2020 VBS materials from Shepherd of the Lake and somewhere. I'm not sure where. So anyway, you get this plethora of resources in a page like this here. Anti-racism resources for sharing. There you go. So somebody put up a PDF file and you're curious about some anti-racism resources. And there you go. Wow, look at this. Children's resources, Darcy Middlestead out in Texas. She is phenomenal. She puts together, Robin DiAngelo, White Fragility book. There's a YouTube video, Deconstructing White Privilege, a study guide. Just there's a treasure trove of materials. And that took all of like 30 seconds to find. If you just kind of know what's out there, where to look, and that's kind of what this portion of this time together is about. So just want to share 2 more real quick, and then we'll wrap it up here. Posted the time to go to 8:30 Eastern, so we'll stop then. Well, let me stop actually here. Are there any other general questions or things that you hoped we would kind of touch base on, or that we haven't? The other resources I'll just share via email. So just to wrap it up here, are there thoughts or questions that you have or hoping for, or would you like to see something else a little to dive deeper into one of those things we talked about? I'm happy to do, another session. It could be more specific, or it could be just next level. Or let me just go around and check. Avery, how are you feeling about this? Are there things you want to know more about, or things you want to dive deeper into, or
I think everything you covered has been very helpful and very useful.
Okay. All right. And also just invite anybody to, if you have further questions, happy to help. I know Dave is a great resource in Virginia. So, I mean, I'm happy to help answer questions too, but it's all a shared ministry thing for me. Territory is not an issue for me. We're all in this together. I'll bring that back in.
And you are going to email all the information to us?
Yes, Dwayne, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Anything else from you, Dwayne? I noticed you
No.
have the same last name as.
It was good. I appreciate it.
Okay.
It was good
Hey.
information.
There you are. Good to see you, man.
Fine. Yeah.
So, are you any relation to Jabari?
Yeah, Jabari is my son.
Awesome. So Jabari and I have talked a little bit about some website work or some graphic work. We're interested. We're kind of still in conversation mode, but yeah, he's a good guy, and he serves on one of the Synod teams, diversity and justice team. So yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's my oldest, so yeah, I'm glad he's doing well in that. That's good.
But I do drink from my Georgia Tech cup, though. Sorry.
Do you really? I'll try not to hold that against you.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. That division runs deep in this territory.
It really does.
The funny thing, though, is if I could go grab it, I would. My license plate says House Divided. I'm Georgia Tech, and my wife is Georgia.
Really?
She went to University of Georgia, and I went to Georgia Tech. So.
Oh, okay. You
never know Yeah, you never know the path that you're going to be going down.
I'm sorry, but I'll always be roll tide roll. So
there it is. My daughter brought it over to me. That was on the front of the car we just sold. So there we go.
I'm from up north, and I didn't understand any of this until about 10 years ago. And I was like, but you're both from Georgia. Like, I don't get it. I get it now. That's the real Southern baptism right there is, do you understand football rivalries? But it's actually just about bedtime for us. So I wanted to say thank you to you, Pastor Michael, and to everybody for being on this call. Thank you so much for these resources, and I look forward to chatting with everybody at some point again in the future. So be well.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Take care.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. So yeah, there's a lot to process. So like for future references or anything that has to do with future gatherings, get-togethers like this, because I love this. I like the camaraderie. I think actually more of the ability to get together and just chit chat and kind of share. So maybe if there's a topic, I like the idea of us being from Virginia and y'all from Georgia and getting a chance to kind of converse and see how it leads us. I think it's really cool because how do we grow? We grow by sharing and stuff. Plus on top of that, in this day and age, in this world, we have to have each other, because if we don't have each other, then we're divided. And whether we're Georgia Tech, it's okay. We can come together and find that common ground. But no, I really like this because sometimes you feel like you're out there all by yourself. You feel like you have to. Just how you brought up the diagram, I mean, we all kind of fit in there somewhere. And yeah, I would like to see more of this. I mean, this is something we talked about with Dave as well as in Virginia Synod. But I think the more that we can do this, so Pastor Michael, this would be a suggestion for you, is to talk to Dave about the possibility of us getting some type of Zoom together that we can all kind of have those chit chats about. Because we used to want to have a retreat. The youth leaders wanted to have a retreat, and Dave said that he had tried that in the past. It didn't work very well. But now with us learning more and more about virtual learning, I think almost everybody on the planet knows how to work Zoom. I swear to God, my dog Darcy knows how to run it for me. But honestly,
Yeah.
we can use this to get together. So that's my suggestion. I'm going to a head honcho here to talk to the other head honcho to maybe facilitate something like this. Because I will say it again, I like meeting the people from Georgia. This is nice.
Excellent. Awesome. I will absolutely take that to Dave and to others and see, you know, I know regionally we're starting to do some other things together, not necessarily youth related, but we did a workshop called Being Church in a Digital Age. And that was between Virginia and us and North Carolina. And so, you know, Region 9 in our ELCA speak is like Florida, Bahamas, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Southeastern Synod. So like that whole Southeastern chunk of the US is kind of one organizational element of the ELCA. So we can certainly look at more of this. Happy to. And then Kate Hofstetter, how about for you?
Well, first of all, I was just going to say, when it's safe, we get through COVID. If we wanted to do something, you know, in the Bahamas, that sounds a whole lot better than going to Minneapolis in February. Just put that out there. But yeah, I completely agree with what Nikki said in terms of just being able to come together. And I mean, not that any of us would have ever wished a global pandemic on any of ourselves, but the fact that I've attended numerous Zoom meetings through our synod and also other synods, you know, within the region on a variety of topics that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to access. You know,
Yep.
Georgia, done a couple things in Alabama, and, you know, as well as again, within our own state, but really the opportunity to come together on a weeknight, you know, it really is a good thing. And it does help to, you know, reground you a little bit and bring things into a little bit better focus. And again, knowing that we're all in this together and, you know, we're all in the same boat. We just hope it's not the Titanic. So, but you know, these are definitely challenging times, but there certainly have been some lights in the darkness. So that's been helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And to keep in mind as we do youth ministry, well, any ministry, but particularly youth ministry too, is there's the overwhelming promise in Scripture. I think the one most proclaimed throughout all of Scripture is fear not, is that sort of command. But you can probably fill in the blanks that come after, like, fear not, for I am with you. And so we're not doing this alone. God is with us, supporting this. We follow the call of discipleship to go and love God and love others. And hopefully that's what we do in youth ministry. And, you know, youth ministry isn't just about doing something for kids, right? It's living out your own faith in front of them. And when you hit the rough patches, you show that you lean on others to help you through it. And when you're on those mountaintop moments, we give thanks to God for those moments as well. But just recognizing that God's with us in all those cases, right? In the highs and lows and everywhere in between. Well, thanks for joining. I will send you the video recording. I'll send you the links. I will talk to other Synod youth leaders and see who else wants to do this. I am, what was the other thing? I'm going to include a little survey if you're interested in doing a quick little survey that'll come in the email, just to see another way for you to remind me of some of those other ideas that you all shared. I wrote them down, but just another avenue to hear some of those thoughts.
So it's a test.
You do with it what you will, but I will be grateful for those too. Just any kind of feedback is always helpful. So I do that with any meeting I do, any major meeting like this. So, all right. Well, thank you all. I'll close us out with a prayer and wish you all a good night. So let us pray. Gracious God, as you gather us together from different areas here in the Southeast, that you remind us of your presence, that as we do youth ministry, we are not alone, that your Spirit is guiding us, the one who causes us to engage with the world around us, that Spirit draws us out. And whether it's to be in front of the group and to be fun and cheerful, or to sort of quietly support ministry, whether it's through donations or preparation for youth events, or volunteering for Synod youth events or other larger gatherings, or right now maybe just praying for our youth and wishing them the best, that they might know that God is with them. Wherever we are in our ministry, we give you thanks for the opportunity to do the work, to know that you're supporting us, and to know that this isn't just about us, but about us serving the ones that you have put in our care. And we thank you for that awesome responsibility. It can be overwhelming, but it can also be filled with joy. And so I pray that you remind us of those joyful moments, and to remind us that whether we see the fruit or not, it is worthwhile work that we do in your name. And it is in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. It was great to get to know some of you, all of you. Avery, I think, is the only one I really had any kind of connection to before, just knowing you through various Synod youth events. But good to see you all. It's good to get to know you all, and I wish you all a good night.
It's good to see you too, Dwayne, towards the end there, man.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everybody.
All right. Good night.